robbery.
Almost everything that could possibly go wrong with this did go wrong with it.
And the truth behind the legendary Jackalope.
There's evidence that this critter is more than just a tall tale.
Deep in the vaults of the world's greatest institutions lie extraordinary relics, tales of intrigue and wonder, and secrets waiting to be revealed.
These are the mysteries at the museum.
Basel, Switzerland. Boasting more than 40 galleries and cultural institutions, this city has the highest concentration of museums in all of Europe. And perhaps the most historic is set inside a house from the Middle Ages. Pharmacy Museum, Basel. Here, visitors can find a medieval alchemy lab, chemistry equipment from the 1800s, and a pharmacy used by Swiss royals. But amidst these large-scale exhibits is a rather small item.
It's about 8 inches tall, it has a glass lid, and inside is a piece of organic matter. It's a little stalk, and there's something growing on it.
This plant may look harmless, but according to historian Matthew Sweet, it's linked to one of the most bizarre conspiracies the world has ever seen.
This specimen may have played a part in a deadly incident that drove a large number of people really to the brink of madness.
It's August 16, 1951, in the French village of Pont-Saint-Esprit. At first, it seems like just another day. But in the late morning, it becomes clear that something in this small town is very wrong.
People begin to feel ill, and they have stomach pains.
Dozens of villagers report the same agonizing symptoms. And by midday, the situation gets even worse. Residents are experiencing terrifying hallucinations.
People imagined that they were on fire. There were people who imagined that their bodies were entwined with snakes. There was a guy who thought that he was a plane and jumped out of the window to prove it. This isn't something that affected just a small number of people. The whole town basically went crazy.
For 3 harrowing days, mass hysteria grips the town. On the 4th day, the symptoms finally begin to abate. 300 people have been affected, and 5 are dead.
Something very, very strange happened in that town.
In the wake of the incident, a team of scientists descends on the area in search of the cause of the strange event. They examine victims and scour every inch of the town. Finally, they announce they've found the source of the bizarre episode: the local bakery. According to the scientists, the town's bread supply was contaminated with a naturally occurring poisonous mold called ergot.
Ergot poisoning is pretty serious. It doesn't just upset your stomach, it can mess with your mind. it can give you hallucinations. In extreme cases, it can kill you.
With the mystery apparently solved, the incident becomes known as Le Pain Maudit, the case of the cursed bread.
There was an acceptance in the town that this had been an unfortunate incident, something that nobody could have prevented.
But some people find the explanation insufficient. Although it was common during the Middle Ages, ergot poisoning in recent times is extremely rare. Since the 19th century, advances in agricultural processes have eradicated this scourge from the food supply. In fact, the last documented case on French soil occurred more than 100 years previously.
Some think this wasn't the result of an accident in a bakery. What happened in the town had nothing to do with bread. But nobody offered a satisfactory explanation of what it was.
For decades, the hallucinations in Pont-Saint-Esprit remain one of the most baffling mysteries of the 20th century. That is, until a researcher in the United States blows the case wide open. 2009. American journalist Hank Albarelli is working on a book about the CIA.
Hank Albarelli is a specialist in intelligence matters. He writes about the secret state.
While sifting through declassified archives, Albarelli comes across a document that references the strange events in Pont-Saint-Esprit.
The document he found is evidence that the CIA had an interest in what was going on in this town.
Intrigued, Albarelli digs deeper. He reads a transcribed conversation between a pharmaceutical rep and a CIA agent that refers to the secret of Pont-Saint-Esprit. It says the outbreak wasn't caused by moldy bread, but by something called diethylamide.
And that's the D in LSD.
The journalist also discovers that one of the scientists sent to Pont-Saint-Esprit to investigate was a man named Albert Hoffman, the inventor of LSD.
Albert Hoffman was the father of LSD. He first synthesized it in the 1930s. Barely anybody in the world knows about it, apart from Hoffman and the CIA.
Albarelli is convinced that Hoffman was working with the CIA and believes they deliberately contaminated the Pont-Saint-Esprit food supply with LSD.
Albarelli's theory is this was the CIA carrying out an experiment involving mind-altering drugs.
According to the journalist, the CIA wanted to see if LSD could be used as a weapon in the Cold War.
The CIA was hoping to use it as a kind of wonder drug that would make people tell the truth.
Based on his research, Albarelli believes that Hoffman and the scientists sent to Pont-Saint-Esprit were actually working with the CIA to orchestrate a massive cover-up. They blamed the hallucinations on another affliction that causes the exact same effects as LSD, ergot poisoning. Although the CIA has never admitted any wrongdoing, many believe that Albarelli's research uncovered the truth behind the outbreak. Today, in Basel, Switzerland, this strand of rye, contaminated with ergot, recalls a bizarre epidemic and the mind-boggling conspiracy theory at the heart of the case. Portland, Oregon. This city's Tillicum Crossing carries bicycles, electric streetcars, and pedestrians, but not automobiles, making it the only bridge of its kind in the country. And celebrating this region's transportation is the Oregon Rail Heritage Center. Here, visitors can climb aboard a vintage caboose, a mid-century sleeper car, and a steam locomotive from the 1940s. But among these engineering marvels is one that really stands out for its power and size.
This is a massive, massive piece of steel. It's a black 80-foot-long cylinder, 15 feet around, with 6-foot-high wheels underneath it. It's the classic childhood vision of a railroad train.
This is the Oregon Railroad and Navigation Company's number 197 locomotive. According to writer Finn J.D. John, a train like this one was linked to one of the Wild West's most incredible robberies.
Almost everything that could possibly go wrong with this did go wrong with it.
1914, Camella, Oregon. The Pacific Northwest is a dangerous place, plagued with gunslinging desperados and villainous thieves. And perhaps the most fearsome criminals of all is a gang led by Charles Manning.
They were Wild West robbers. Kind of outlaw royalty.
Manning and his partners have pulled off a string of dastardly crimes. But now, they are planning their biggest heist yet.
They were ready to do a classic train robbery.
The outlaws have set their sights on a train traveling from Chicago to Portland. Their plan is to break into the express car, where they've heard a large amount of gold is stored.
They were going to get into the safe, get the stuff, and then they would leave.
On July 2nd, Manning and his men board the Oregon Railroad and Navigation Company's number 197 train and set their plot into motion. As the locomotive departs the station, it seems that everything is going according to plan. When the train reaches the Blue Mountains, the gang pulls the emergency brake. Manning and his men move through the compartment and round up the crew.
Turn around.
Then the gang makes a break for the express car.
They knocked on the door and said, "Let us in or we'll blow it up."
But when they open the safe, they get the shock of their lives. It's totally empty.
There was no gold in it. It turned out that they were robbing the wrong train.
With no gold on board, the gang scrambles to form Plan B.
They decided, well, we've got to do something here. Let's rob the passengers.
The outlaws take jewelry, cash, and anything of value from the terrified travelers. But as Manning and his posse make their way through the train, little do they know, they are in for another big surprise.
Bad things happen when you break the law. This was no exception.
It's 1914 in Oregon. 3 outlaws are robbing a passenger train in the Blue Mountains. What these ruthless villains don't realize is they're in for the surprise of their lives.
On board the train is a hotshot lawman, Deputy Sheriff George McGuffey.
He's got a gun, and he was surreptitiously loading it while the bad guys were moving down the train toward him.
McDuffie watches the robbery unfold, biding his time for the right moment to act.
He jumps up, hauls out his gun, and aims it at the robbers. And he's got the drop on them. McDuffie seems to have been some kind of a gunfighting ninja, because with this single action pistol, he shot Manning 3 times before he could fall to the ground.
With the ringleader dead, the 2 other outlaws flee the train. McDuffie gets the word out to local law enforcement, and the rest of the gang is apprehended just 20 miles down the track. Sheriff McDuffie is hailed as a hero.
People saw Sheriff McDuffie as having saved everyone, but he was very humble about it. He said that he was just doing my job, ma'am.
Today, this Oregon Railroad and Navigation Company locomotive at the Oregon Rail Heritage Center recalls the brave sheriff who single-handedly stopped a brazen gang in their tracks. Douglas, Wyoming was originally a pit stop for settlers traveling west on the Oregon Trail. Today, the region's rich history is preserved at the Wyoming Pioneer Memorial Museum. Its displays include a saddle from a steer wrestling competition, a Native American teepee, and a reconstructed 19th century horse buggy. But there is one object here that is perhaps more intriguing than any other.
He's 20 inches from tail to nose. It's white and gray. It has the features of a rabbit with long ears and a fuzzy tail, but it also has horns.
This is the Wild West's most legendary creature, the jackalope. But according to assistant curator Mary Morgan, its curious appearance may be based more in fact than in fiction.
There's evidence that this legendary critter is more than just a tall tale.
It's 1807 in Wyoming. Mountain man John Coulter is on an expedition to explore the American West. One day, while hunting, he spots something unusual out of the corner of his eye.
He noticed a very curious sight that he couldn't explain. A creature that had protrusions coming out of its head. It had a body of a jackrabbit, but the horns of a deer.
But the animal runs away before Coulter is able to capture it. News of Coulter's sighting of an odd horned rabbit spreads far and wide. And it's soon clear that he's not the only person to have spotted this bizarre bunny. Others throughout the West claim they too have encountered such a creature. As reports pile up, it's even given a name: the jackalope.
A jackalope refers to the jackrabbit, and an antelope.
But despite all the sightings, no one is able to capture one to study.
Some people say that one of the reasons that jackalopes are so elusive is that they can run very, very fast. And it could also throw its own voice from a different direction in order to trick you into going the opposite way.
Over time, reports of jackalopes roaming the West become less and less common. And most people eventually believe that the horned rabbit is nothing more than a tall tale.
Jackalope folklore became just a campfire legend, akin to other mythological creatures such as the Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoot.
But in 1932, something amazing happens that changes the history of the jackalope forever. A scientist in New York claims he has finally solved the mystery.
He believes he's discovered the truth about the jackalope.
Will there finally be proof of a real-life jackalope?
It's the 1930s. For over a century, sightings of horned rabbits have persisted across the western United States. The strange creature even has a name, the jackalope. The problem is, no one can prove they actually exist. So what's the truth behind the stories of this bizarre bunny?
1932, Manhattan. Dr. Richard Shope, a virologist in New York, receives a strange parcel from hunters in the West. They claim it is a jackalope horn. The sample consists of a piece of dark, hard tissue removed from the head of a supposedly horned rabbit. And when Shope puts it under a microscope, he makes a curious observation. One that prompts him to wonder if the stories of horned rabbits could actually have a simple scientific explanation.
Dr. Shope has a hunch that the protrusions could be explained in another way. The sample seems more like a wart or a tumor rather than an actual horn.
Shope comes up with a theory. He believes these aren't horns at all. Instead, they might actually be growths caused by an infectious disease. To test his theory, Shope grinds the sample up and mixes it into a liquid.
He then applies the solution to the heads of healthy rabbits. Dr. Shope found that the healthy rabbits began growing horns.
Dr. Shope has proved his theory. He's created real jackalopes. His successful experiment indicates these bizarre creatures were actually normal rabbits infected with a contagious disease that caused benign tumors to grow and look like horns. The doctor names the condition the Shope papillomavirus. He theorizes that the more outlandish aspects of the jackalope legend were merely embellishments produced by overactive imaginations. Today, stories of the jackalope live on. Depictions of the legendary animal appear in souvenir shops, motels, and bars throughout the American West.
We enjoy using the jackalope as something that binds us together because it's funny and because it symbolizes Wyoming in a unique way that people recognize.
Today, this taxidermied mock jackalope on loan to the Wyoming Pioneer Memorial Museum serves as a reminder of a bizarre creature with an enduring appeal. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania earned its place in pop culture history when it served as the setting for the classic boxing film Rocky. Every year, thousands of visitors reenact the movie's most famous scene by running up what are now known as the Rocky Steps. And at the top of these iconic stairs is the entrance to the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Its collection includes a glistening copper sculpture of the Roman goddess Diana, Buddhist shrines, and armor from the Middle Ages. But there's one work of art here that was almost lost to history forever.
It's about 9.5 by 7.5 inches in an ornate gilt frame. It depicts a young woman. Her head is resting on her hand, and it seems like she's lost in thought.
As museum coordinator Kathy Herbert attests, this canvas was nearly destroyed by one of history's most despicable villains.
This was one of the greatest art masterpieces in the world. To have lost this painting would have been almost unimaginable.
It's 1945, and Austria is in the throes of World War II. The Allies are storming across Europe. Their goal? To liberate the continent from the Third Reich. Among them is one unit unlike any other. An elite group now known as the Monuments Men. Made up of soldiers, historians, and art experts, this unique team has been given a special assignment: to recover art stolen by the Nazis.
Art looting was a central part of the Nazi program. They were obsessed with the idea of building this enormous museum. They took thousands of the greatest art treasures in Europe.
And the Monuments Men have just received intelligence about a massive cache of art stored in a salt mine deep in the Austrian Alps.
There were works by Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo. These were cream of the crop.
On May 12th, the Monuments Men advance on the mine. It seems like it's just a matter of time before they recover the treasure.
The Allies were basically around the other side of the mountains from the salt mine, and they were very close.
But when the Allies draw near, disaster strikes. A massive explosion echoes through the mountains. When the Allies reach the mine, they discover that all that's left is a pile of rubble. It appears the mine has fallen prey to a vicious Nazi plot. Rather than let their stolen art fall into Allied hands, the Nazis decided to destroy their loot instead.
The Monuments men thought the mine had been blown up and essentially destroyed.
The unit is devastated. But their mission is far from over. What happens next will change the art world forever.
An Allied unit known as the Monuments Men is desperate to recover a hoard of stolen artwork that's been secreted away in a Nazi salt mine. But when they arrive on the scene, there's been a massive explosion, leading the Allies to believe the artwork has been destroyed. But what the men don't realize is that weeks earlier, a plan was set in motion that would lend them a helping hand.
It's early 1945 in a salt mine in the Austrian Alps. Emmerich Pochmuller is an ardent art lover with a big responsibility. His job is to oversee a collection of masterpieces stolen by the Nazis.
Emmerich Pochmuller always admired art and culture. He knew that these were some of the greatest treasures in the world.
In April, Pochmuller receives word that the Nazis are losing the war and the Allies are advancing on the mine. He then receives an alarming order to blow up the works of art that he holds so dear.
The Nazi Party wanted to institute a scorched earth policy. If they couldn't end up belonging to the German Reich, the artworks should be destroyed.
Pochmuller faces a desperate dilemma. Destroy the art he loves or defy the Third Reich. It's a decision that could cost Pochmuller his life.
Anyone who did not cooperate with Nazi leaders could be summarily executed.
The man makes a bold choice. He decides to defy his orders and save the art.
Destroying these, cultural treasures would have been almost unimaginable.
Pochmuller comes up with a cunning scheme. He plants 6 tons of explosives near the entrance to the mine. When he sets them off, it will appear to his superiors as if the mine has been destroyed. But if the plan works, the blast will simply seal off the underground chambers and protect the art inside. As the Allies draw closer, he hits the detonator and flees. "11 days later, the Allies arrive on the scene. Although it looks like total destruction, they take a chance and start to dig.
The Allies hoped there would be something left, because any kind of explosion is rather unpredictable.
Hours later, they finally break through into the mine. The Monuments Men can't believe their eyes.
The artworks in the mine were essentially unharmed. The Allies were enormously relieved.
The Monuments Men recover more than 12,000 works of art, including this oil on canvas by the French painter Corot. Thanks to their unprecedented art rescue and the efforts of an unlikely ally, the Monuments Men are hailed as heroes.
The fact that all the artworks were saved is one of the great stories to come out of the entire history of the war.
Today, this masterful painting at the Philadelphia Museum of Art recalls the artistic treasures that almost became casualties of war. Huntsville, Alabama, is the birthplace of America's rocketry program, earning it the nickname the Rocket City. And honoring this rich history is the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. Among its 1,500 artifacts are a full-size mock-up of the Skylab space station, a Saturn V lunar rocket, and the Apollo 16 capsule that orbited the moon in 1972. But among these mammoth feats of engineering, there is one exhibit that dwarfs them all.
It's 78 feet wide, it's 149 feet long, and it weighs about 5.5 million pounds. It's mostly white with some gray and black and a fair amount of orange. The artifact is probably one of the most complex machines ever created.
This is the NASA Space Shuttle Pathfinder. According to curator Ed Stewart, this icon of space exploration is linked to a riddle so bizarre, it baffled scientists for generations.
The phenomenon was so unusual that it remained a mystery for over a century.
July 1st, 1908, London, England. It's a seemingly ordinary evening. But around midnight, something incredible happens.
There were some very unusual lights in the night sky. They were unusual blues, and then the closer you got to the horizon, the more pink they became. So it was really extraordinarily bright. You could read street signs, you could walk around mostly unaided.
Police are flooded with phone calls from people all over the city reporting the peculiar sight.
Nobody knew what it was. People thought, oh my gosh, part of London may be on fire.
But London is not burning. In fact, the bizarre phenomenon is also reported across Western Europe.
The lights could be seen from the UK, Germany, Austria, Denmark, even Spain.
And scientists around the world are desperate for an explanation.
You had geologists, astronomers, and meteorologists all trying to figure out what was causing the lights. One theory was the aurora borealis, or the northern lights.
The aurora borealis are colorful lights produced when particles from the sun interact with the Earth's magnetic field. But this hypothesis is quickly dismissed.
The aurora borealis generally are more of a greenish tone, whereas these unusual lights were really blue and pink. The aurora borealis happens in the night sky farther north and closer to the Arctic Circle.
Others speculate that the glow could have been caused not by something from space, but rather from Earth. An erupting volcano.
You get dust and gases spewed high up into the Earth's atmosphere, and it can cause unusual sky colors and unusual lights as well.
But when scientists dig deeper, they find no evidence of any volcanic eruptions at the time of the bizarre glow. It seems no one can come up with a valid explanation for this incredible event.
There was no solid theory for what the lights were caused by.
And what is known as the 1908 night lights becomes one of the great unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. But in 2007, the case is reopened. An atmospheric scientist named Michael Kelley has long been fascinated by this historic phenomenon.
Michael Kelley was a very well-respected scientist and very good at his job. He was very interested in these unusual lights.
Kelley scours history books for anything that could point to an explanation. Finally, he finds something. A single catastrophic event, the likes of which the Earth had never seen.
In 1908, the skies over Europe were lit up by an unexplained blue and pink light. The cause of this phenomenon remained unknown for over a century. But in 2007, a scientist named Michael Kelley comes up with an explosive new theory. So what's the truth behind the mystery nightlights?
Michael Kelley is combing through records when he finds something amazing. In June of 1908, a gigantic comet burst through the Earth's atmosphere and decimated a remote region of Siberia.
It was 1,000 times larger than the bomb at Hiroshima.
Kelley believes this event is somehow the key to explaining the mysterious lights that illuminated Europe.
Comets are made up of primarily ice and rock. As the comet comes into the Earth's atmosphere, it starts to burn up, and that ice then vaporizes and becomes water vapor in the Earth's upper atmosphere.
Kelley thinks that light refracted through this water vapor might have produced the brilliant colors that lit up the 1908 sky. But to prove it, he needs to replicate the effects of a giant comet moving through the atmosphere. And the only thing that can come close is a space shuttle launch.
The water vapor produced during a space shuttle launch would very closely mimic how water vapor from a comet would behave in the Earth's atmosphere.
On August 8, 2007, a space shuttle blasts off from Cape Canaveral, Florida. The conditions on this particular day are similar to those when the lights were seen in Europe in 1908. Hundreds of miles away in Alaska, Michael Kelley nervously scans the night sky. And then it happens.
He sees on the horizon a pink band with blue shimmering lights above it, and he's absolutely thrilled. What he sees is almost exactly a picture-perfect description of how the lights appeared in Europe.
Michael Kelley has proven his theory and solved a 100-year-old riddle. In fact, in the right place and under the correct conditions, spectacular lights can be seen in the night sky during other NASA launches. And today, this space shuttle in Huntsville, Alabama, recalls a spectral phenomenon that lit up the world's imagination. Home to more than 2.5 million people, Brooklyn is the most populous New York City borough. It's also one of the most ethnically diverse places in the world. Almost 40% of its residents were born outside the United States. And celebrating this vibrant cultural mix is the Brooklyn Museum. The institution houses more than 1.5 million artifacts, including a Japanese Buddha, a sculpture by the famed French artist Auguste Rodin, and a priceless Egyptian figurine. But amid these global treasures is an object that was crafted much closer to home.
The artifact is about 8.5 inches tall by about 4 inches wide. It's wearing a skirt, and it has decorations on the face, particularly on the chin and on the sides of the cheeks.
This strange-looking doll speaks to an extraordinary tale of kidnapping and redemption that played out on the American frontier.
This is one of the most infamous missing person stories of the 19th century.
It's 1851. Droves of pioneers are headed to the uncharted territory of the American West. Among them is 15-year-old Lorenzo Oatman. He and his family have left their Illinois home in search of opportunity.
Lorenzo Oatman was one of a family of 7 children, and with his parents, they are heading for what they feel will be their fortune in California.
But as the Oatmans enter the Arizona territory, they see a band of Native American warriors approaching.
Their wagon is attacked.
In the chaos, Lorenzo is struck on the head and passes out. When he comes to, he is greeted by a gruesome scene.
His mother, his father, many of his brothers and sisters have all been massacred.
But among the carnage, there is a glimmer of hope. Lorenzo notices that the bodies of 2 of his sisters, 7-year-old Marianne and 14-year-old Olive, are missing. He reasons that this can only mean one thing: they're still alive.
Lorenzo believes that they were taken by whoever attacked them. And so he vows to himself that he is going to find them.
For 5 long years, Lorenzo treks across the western frontier. He goes from town to town, hoping to uncover any information that might lead him to his lost sisters.
Lorenzo is searching for his 2 sisters frantically, trying to get anyone to help him to find them.
But he finds no news on the whereabouts of Marianne and Olive. It seems he may never find out what happened to them.
At that point, Lorenzo is not too sure where to turn.
But then, in 1856, he finally gets a lead. A native man named Francisco has heard of white women living among a tribe in California. It's a glimmer of hope.
It was not the normal situation to have non-native girls living in a whole native tribe.
So has Lorenzo finally found his sisters?
It's the 1850s. For 5 long years, Lorenzo Oatman has been on a desperate hunt to find his 2 sisters who've been kidnapped by Native Americans. But now he has a tip-off that he thinks could lead him to his kin. But little does he know, their fate is stranger than he ever expected.
A native man named Francisco has heard of white women living among a tribe in California. It's a glimmer of hope. But as a white man, Lorenzo cannot approach the tribe himself. Instead, Francisco investigates on his own. Francisco ventures into Indian territory to meet with the tribe. There he finds a young woman. Although she is wearing a traditional Mojave dress and has a tribal chin tattoo, she also has markedly fair skin.
Francisco is able to tell that she is indeed a white woman. She is Olive Oatman.
Olive explains that when her family caravan had been attacked, she and her sister had been taken captive, just as her brother suspected. At first, life with the natives was torturous. But eventually, they were sold to the Mojave tribe, who treated them like family.
They were taken by the chief's family and his wife. They had, in a way, sort of adopted him to the head family.
The Mojave tribal elders even tattooed their faces to symbolize their acceptance into the group. A tradition illustrated on this Mojave doll at the Brooklyn Museum.
Tattooing a face meant that that person was cared about.
Olive says that her sister, along with other tribe members, died during a drought sometime previously. But she expresses her desire to be reunited with her brother. So Francisco brings her back to Fort Yuma.
Lorenzo is overjoyed to see her. It was the end of a long quest. They could be a family again.
Today, this tattooed Mojave doll, preserved at the Brooklyn Museum, recalls this remarkable tale of survival and reunion on the American frontier. From bizarre bread to a